welcome back to Liquid Lunch. Hey,
Yes.
Fudge Patrol.
Oh dear.
Say it fast 3 times.
I don't want to. Did you come up with all those names?
Yeah.
That cap, it's special, I tell you.
I'll tell you. Anyways, those are just some of our band names, but we're here now with Clark Lord.
Yes.
Clark, great to meet you. Welcome to that channel.
Thanks for having me today.
Now, I guess you're good friends with Aaron here, right? So.
Yep.
Clark is good people.
How did you guys get to know each other?
I don't know. Community.
Yeah, just just part of the flow.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's how I live. I don't plan things, whatever sort of.
Right. Okay. Are you
whatever rises up, that's what I move with. That's
interesting. That's kind of resonates with what some of the other people on the show have been talking about today.
And that's how you kind of came here as well, and how life has taken us, and here we are.
Yep. That's the whole topic of what I'm gonna be speaking about, because that's my process right now, even more so now than in the past.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's your process. That's what you're speaking about today. It's kind of going with the flow.
Well, there's really 2 things that I'm looking to speak on right now. Back in June of last year, I had a car accident which damaged my spinal cord somewhat, and also a bit of a head injury. And you could either say by the process of some type of miracle, or through my own efforts or the efforts of others, or fate, whichever way you want to say, is left me with the ability to speak on certain things. And the majority of people who I've met who had virtually the same thing happen, for whatever reason, have not been left with that. Mostly have to use a wheelchair, or their voice doesn't work in the same way. But I'm not going to say by luck, but I'm still here, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason that's been so is by not resisting the process. That was somewhat my way in the past, but now it really came into play on a very practical level.
So you're saying, before,
yeah,
although maybe theoretically you were
Right.
not resisting the process, now you've learned to not resist even more, to go with the flow.
In the
Through
past,
experience.
it was more of intellectually. You could say, well, this makes sense.
Right.
I could see how that could apply to something. But now, that was my only option. So I was putting basically everything actually to the test.
Right.
I can just imagine, going through something like that and being very resistant to the process or to the flow, because and I just wonder, were you, in the aftermath of the accident, were you at all resistant to the fact that?
Well, it's a very strange process, and I wrote a story about it which explains it much more in detail, which was, I could just tell you the name of the magazine that was in. It was in a magazine called Outspoken, and that was just published in their spring issue, just maybe last week. And that really gets into the focus of how that really happened. But there was a particular moment where I found out that if I was going to fight this process, it would make everything take longer, and it didn't make anything easier if I was going to choose that road.
Right.
To resist
the
reality, right?
Because that creates a stress in your body, right?
Right.
Which slows down every type of healing, which I really found that out on a first-hand level.
Right.
About the stress.
Yeah, like if you're in a tense situation, you could go to the gym all day and everything like that, but you won't get the best result.
Right.
That's just how I saw it and how it's worked
But that's a whole level of realization within
Yeah.
itself, because people realize it doesn't work, but they can't stop resisting. And that's why there's a lot of people not recovering, going to depression, and not taking the next step to help themselves or help others through that experience.
Right, because that's not really an aspect that is really focused on. Like, nobody in the hospital was talking about that.
Right.
That was just my own self.
So that's something you had to learn from that hard
well,
experience.
it's something that I had imagined that I knew,
yeah.
but here was the chance to really test it.
Right.
So that's my path right now, is to speak on those types of attitudes, really, and how one could use that when facing really any major change that was not planned.
Things that we
That's-
can't control.
A change, and not just any change, but a change that
Yeah.
on the surface anyway seems very negative.
Well, some changes you plan for, right?
yeah.
Major changes, you know, you get married, you have a child, or you choose a job, you leave a job. Those ones, you kind of have an idea how that may go. When you have a car accident and you're unconscious and you wake up in the hospital, you didn't plan any of that, and you don't even know what necessarily happened over the course of the first couple of days, because you were really not in this world, right? So you're left trusting people who you didn't really know, right?
Right.
So all you have left is really your faith, right? Which, and the only reason why I'm here now is because I'm sort of living proof. Like, I'm walking around, I'm talking, and I sort of feel that I have to use that as my platform now.
Right.
To,
So I'm just curious, when you were first coming to grips with the new situation,
Yeah.
right, after the accident,
yeah.
were you depressed at some
Well,
point?
I wouldn't say really so much, you know. I guess maybe that was my nature from before. And, you know, I did have a lot of support around me from family, friends, and all that. And I was really amongst really the best doctors, really. Like, I ended up at a place called Lyndhurst, which is a spinal rehab hospital.
Where is that?
That's just around Bayview and Eglinton area.
Oh, okay.
It's a rehab place which is totally focused on spinal cord injuries,
Yeah.
and everybody from all over Canada comes there. I would say it's probably one of the best places, definitely in North America.
Yeah.
So, and once again, I ended up there. I didn't know how that was gonna go, because I had no experience with that, right? So I just had to just go with it.
Trust.
And somewhere early in that process, I would notice patients who were in a similar situation as me, and they would, anytime that they would fight the process, their progress would start to get less. And, you know, the people who like would want to go back home before they got to a certain point, or, you know, who wouldn't do the physio every day, or just were asking why, and stuff like that, would just sort of take a couple steps back. And when you have a spinal cord injury, it's really important, because your nerves are healing themselves a small amount every day. And if you miss even one of those days, you could slip back quite a bit. So, and these are all things that I learned. Like,
Right.
I wasn't a doctor, right? So I've just been witnessing all these things. And since then, I've been documenting these things, and now it seems to be working out that it's going to be my path to comment on my process, because lots of people have said that I need to do that
Yeah.
based off where I'm coming from, because typically 1 year after a spinal cord injury, it's not like this.
Right.
So you made great progress. Is what
Well,
you're saying.
this is what I've been told from the experts, right? I'm not judging it off my own ego,
Right.
let's say.
And speaking of that, like, you've been very humble, and I like the way you share your story. But I know there's more than just the physical challenge, because right now it seems like through a tough experience, your life path is being shown to you, and you're going with that flow.
Well-
And this article is a part of it. You're putting it out there, you're sharing, and you're saying, hey, you know, I want to share this with you and show you a better way of healing.
Yeah.
Also, though, there's, I'm sure, other obstacles that came with this.
Yeah, there's always obstacles, you know, but I find that it's really the way that you frame things in your mind that determines how you look at it. Like, if you want to say obstacles, otherwise you could say maybe challenges and tests, or just call the whole thing is really a mystery, right?
Right.
Which keeps on going to the new levels. So it's not like you reach one place and then you're done. Like, life moves on, right? Like, you face new goals and you grow, right?
Yeah.
So, but the major sort of perspective that I use is not looking at what's been lost, but which roads are open now, right? Like, that's always been how I've lived. But now I had to really prove it, right? So what sort of happened was, like, everything that I've been studying, living, believing, and thinking now really came into practice, right? So it sort of seems like whatever I'd been doing for 34 years was what I needed to do to get to this point.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the best way I could put it.
So I'm still wondering if there was a moment when you were, you know, after the accident where you had some sort of a shift where you went from maybe not accepting the situation to a sort of a moment of relief, or something where you did accept it and now things became clearer, things became easier, and you sort of would take a new approach forward.
Well, for me, the relief only comes while I'm being active in the continuing process. That's where the moments come, not when I sit there and try to think about it.
Yeah.
It comes when I'm active in the process, like here, or because really, like, you're really being reborn. Like, some part of you, I don't really understand the higher level of it, but I do know that you have to go through really a whole rebirth, right? And like, when, like with a young child, right? They just keep moving forward, and then they find out what they are, right? They don't just sit there and contemplate, right? Because you won't really find the answers unless you seek them, right? So
I guess part of that is life's not about thinking about it, it's about experiencing it, right?
Right. Like, you can't really imagine an experience, because once you get there, it's never what you imagine.
Exactly.
That's just because we're not that smart, right? Like, we can rise in the levels to masteries, but we're not the complete masters, right? Because we're human, right? That's just where we're at,
the way it is
right now.
Yeah.
But when you are faced with a great challenge like I was, you do see that you can accomplish anything that you really set your mind to. Like, there was a point where I said, okay, listen, you know, I don't think it's going to be reasonable to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. Like, not that there's anything specifically wrong with that, but I knew that I couldn't accept that. Just one, because I had the potential to not do that, and two, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to live with that, right? So, I mean,
but so what do you tell somebody though that doesn't have the option?
Yeah.
You know, say that they've been through a similar accident, but they don't have the opportunity to get beyond the wheelchair.
Right. Well, well, what's really interesting is that as I've moved on in my physical progress, from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane and so on, the process hasn't necessarily become easier. It's become, in a way, somewhat more confusing, right? Because you're moving back into your old world and into the so-called real world, but you're really not back to yourself. Like, your activities have been put on hold for 1 year. Your body doesn't function the same. So you're really not the same person, but you're back in the same environment. Whereas when you're in a wheelchair, it's a lot more simple.
Right.
It just depends if you're trying to not be in a wheelchair. Because when I was in a wheelchair, I said, okay, I'm in a wheelchair now. That doesn't mean I'll always be there. But if I don't accept being there at the time, that will most likely not change, right?
That's true.
And really, like, people who are in a wheelchair, I've seen they seem to have a lot of light, you know, because life for them is much more simple. I found, like, I have some great friends who are in wheelchairs and they're always smiling. So I would just say that it really depends on where your head is at.
Right.
Like,
It's,
not really where your body's at, right?
again, it's the choices that we make.
Because this is the example I use, right? If you look at something like yoga, like the whole process of yoga, the physical postures are supposed to be used to get you to the point of sitting still. That's what they're supposed to be for. So if you could stand on your head 100 times, but if you can't sit still with yourself, then you're not doing yoga, right? And when you're in a wheelchair, what are you doing? You're sitting with yourself, right? So on one level, it does give you more of a chance to reach your higher self, right? But that's not really talked about. Like, everything that's talked about, oh, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, right?
Right.
It's not focused on what you can do, right?
Interesting, because so many people are always thinking about just their material life,
Well,
right?
it's about what's limiting us and what's, you know, the face value of everything.
Yeah.
There's no higher.
Because we all know that none of us are taking any of this with us, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, like me, like, I literally, like, you know, I did, like, leave this world for a short amount of time, right? Like, being unconscious, that's what happened. You're no longer really here. I don't know what happened during that amount of time because, well, I wasn't there, right?
Right.
So I can't really say. But all I know is that it left me, for some reason, having the ability to comment and speak like this. So I see that as part of my path now, which is why I started writing my story, writing my songs. You know, I'm gonna join a speaking group quite soon, you know. I don't know if I would call it necessarily motivational speaking. I don't know the right term yet, but I just know that that's what I'm supposed to do.
Well, you're sharing, because you know,
Yeah.
you started with the article Steps on the Way. You're here.
Yeah,
You're joining a speaking group and you're sharing.
yeah, I mean, even like 1 year ago, like in my circle of friends, like one of my names was Shanti, right? That's what some people call me, which means peace, right? So I was sort of on this path already, but I didn't have like the physical proof. But now the proof is myself, right?
Right.
Like, I'm here. Like if you read my story at some point, it would say how all the worlds that I'm involved in now, I was never involved in before. I never went to gyms. I'd never be going to the doctor. I'd never be talking to lawyers, dealing with cops, you know, dealing with insurance people, you know, wearing a suit, like all these things, right? All of that was no part of my world. Like, I'm a guitar player, right? Like, I write songs, you know, like I work in farmers markets. I deal with that sort of stuff. But I was really faced now with having to, I guess some people would call it dealing with your shadow side, right? Your the part of yourself that you've resisted for whatever reason. I know I really found out that there's no us and them, right? Everybody is on the same path, right? Trying to really heal themselves, right? But we take different outward expressions that we think that we need to do, or sometimes we have to do, right? Based on, you know, the jobs you choose, the perspective you choose, the lifestyle you choose, right? It's just basically trying to calm yourself down to get to that point of balance, right?
Right.
So I found that out. Like, right now, my lawyer is my good friend, right? Like, I would always like avoid lawyers in the past. Like, my doctor is my good friend. Before this, I didn't go to the doctor for years. Now I go like every couple weeks. Like, hopefully that will end, but that's where it's been now. And but the other thing that I really need to say something about is that some of the things I've witnessed that have happened to people who have had accidents worse than mine, right? Because, you know, we live in Canada here, right? And we like to think that we're a pretty just place, right? Like, we can vote, you know, we have health care, everything like that, right? But I know, like, through what's happened with me and through what I've observed, that everything is really not as it should be. Like, like people who have major injuries, if you want to call it disabilities, I don't use that word, but are really dealt with as another sort of fringe minority, right? Which I wasn't aware of that ever, right?
Now, do you mean by people themselves, or by
By
individuals, or by the system?
By people, sometimes they're on family, but not that I'm talking about, but really by the whole system, right? Like, ask anybody who has to use, say, wheelchairs, right? That's a huge problem, right? Because you take somebody who's in a wheelchair, like, they're starting off, they already have a problem. Sometimes it's even hard for them to speak. Say, to book an appointment, right? Or to write it down. Like, some people have those challenges, right? And repeatedly, all these services are not on time. You know, they don't treat the person with the same respect that they would another person, right? Like, I've just seen that, right? Like, I wouldn't have known that before, and I even had that happen with me. Though now I'm a bit more fortunate, right? Like, I can, you know, I look like a regular person. I still have my own challenges, right? But, you know, I have a good lawyer, I have a good family, and all that, right? But still, it happens with me, and I just sometimes I wonder, you know, like, the majority of, say, subway stations are all stairs, right?
Absolutely.
And for me, that's even hard still, right? Like, I don't use the subway that often because I can't, right? So I'm wondering what happens with people who are in a wheelchair still, or worse, right? Because you don't want to just be stuck at home all day. Like, that makes your situation worse, right?
And we have mutual friends who are fighting this battle, and they're really
Yeah,
not
so I
going
mean,
anywhere with it.
I don't really know, like, I would have thought, well, okay, we live in Canada, you know, all these things are there. That's why we pay taxes, right? But it's really not, right? And not to mention, like, the legal system, which I can't really talk so much about right now. But to me, some things have been really shocking, you know? Like, you hear about these things happening in other countries, right? But what happens is, it's a catch-22, because you get an injury and you sort of become more invisible, right? Like, you're not like, typical, you don't have the same job, you're not in the same status, right?
That's the problem. There's status, you know?
So, I mean, all I can say, to me, it's just been a really shocking thing.
But you know what? It wouldn't happen if you couldn't handle it, and that's why you're here to talk about this,
I mean,
and that is part of your path.
Yeah, so I mean, I just thank God there's a lot of, you know, social workers, activists, and good lawyers, and stuff like that, right?
Well, for now, but who knows what's going to happen after 4 years of a conservative majority government?
I mean,
that's a whole other.
But you know what? Part of it too is one's own persistence on the things that you want to get done, right? Because they say, you know, the squeaky wheel, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So now you brought your guitar here. Are you gonna play a song for us?
I will give you a little piece of a song that sort of just flashed into my head one day when I was in the hospital still.
Great.
So I could play you a little, just a little small piece.
That'd be great.
Right.
All right. Because that is one. I'll just give myself a quick plug, you know. That's one thing I'm sort of working on right now, is getting my music happening again. So
Good. And hopefully you'll come back and share more of that with us.
Yeah, I'm working on some recordings right now.
Great.
So we'll see how that goes. But really, my main intention right now is to really talk about the perspectives of dealing with change, you know, and how to really not resist a process, and how to embrace where you're going and not fight where you were.
Right.
Because we can never go back, right?
Absolutely.
Not yet.
But we always have the option to move forward in some way. It might not be what we want to do, but sometimes it's what you have to do.
Absolutely.
So that's really what I'm here to speak on now and in the future, is just having a certain framework of how you see yourself. Not how others see you, but how you see yourself. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself, right?
Absolutely.
So
Thank
they
you.
tell us.
I like, no, well, thank you though.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and I like the way you captured all of that, and
all right.
I'm glad you came to share.
Yeah, and I'd love to come back because I'm writing another article at the moment.
Great.
So I would like to come back and share more.
Okay,
Just to
great.
see if people agree with what I'm talking about.
Are you going to play?
Perfect.
Or
Yeah,
should we just...
I'll give you a quick little hit.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a little piece I wrote maybe a few months back. Well, in these days and in these times, you got to be strong just to survive. You got to rise up, open your eyes up, yes, wise up. You gotta find someone to trust, you better rise up and wise up, open your eyes up, find someone to trust. There's family around me, doctors surround, they're letting me know I was put down on the ground, but that couldn't keep me down. Yes, I'm still around, there's a long road ahead, keep the faith, that's what they said. These toes won't move, can't even touch my shoes. Never mind, it's not time to sing the blues. I got to rise up, open my eyes up, yes, wise up. You better find someone to trust, wise up. You better rise up, open your eyes, find someone to trust. The road goes on, it goes on, it goes on and on and on. And you got to be strong, and then you move on. It goes on and on and on. Please rise up, open your eyes up, yes, wise up, find someone to trust. Rise now, yes, rise now, be wise now, and you got to stay alive.
Thank you, Clark.
It's just a little piece, you know, like, I haven't really been working on the music so strong, so maybe that was a little bit off, I don't know.
Well, next time
That's a great wrap up.
we'll be able to compare, but it sounded pretty good to me. So,
Right.
if people want to read the article, is it available online or?
Well, this particular article, it's not an online magazine, but eventually I will post it on their website.
Okay.
And it's
So-
called Outspoken Magazine.
And it's steps on the way.
Yeah, that is the one it is, and
Great.
I just want to, yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks really to everyone who has really helped me on my way
We're here.
since last year, and to everybody who's facing anything, you know, don't fight it, just accept it and deal, you know.
Thank you.
All right.
And
Until 2012.
until 2012. All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right,
Clark.
That's
Clark.
a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you back and talk about that one. Okay, there's Clark Lord and Outspoken Magazine. I guess Google search that, and Steps on the Way is the name of the article. So let's take a little break, and we're going to come back with Ryan Memarzadeh right after this. That channel.